Alright, good evening everybody. Welcome to State of the Galaxy. This is episode 10. On the agenda today we have the warrior and agent changes, which we'll talk about extensively. We'll also do a brief retrospective of Rise of the Hutt Cartel. And towards the end of the show, I'm going to be a little black rain cloud and worry about the health of the game post-launch of 3.0. So without any further ado, let's begin. We're going to start with warriors first. There weren't that many general changes to warriors. The big one is that retaliation got changed, like a lot. It just got taken away completely from Marauders, and the way it works for Juggernauts is completely different, at least for the damage specs. It now will not proc off of dodging or shielding or whatever when you're in a damage spec, or I think it may be the form. I'll have to check and make sure. It's also on the GCD, which I bet a lot of people are going to be pretty upset about. Just based on what they said about the changes, it seems like Vengeance is just never going to use retaliation, because you have to miss to use it, and if you're accuracy capped, at least in PvE, you're just never going to miss unless you're saber striking. And if you're saber striking, you want the rage, and if you want the rage, you probably don't want to spend it on retaliation. I don't know. Does that make sense to anybody else who plays Warrior?
Yeah, it does.
We'll have to see how much damage it does.
Maybe, but would it be... It would have to do significantly more damage to take the place of any of your fillers as Vengeance. I would think, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since it uses a GCD now.
Yeah. Rage, Rage procs it when they hit Furious Slash. That's fine.
It'll be excellent in PvP, but PvE applications we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. My full thought on retaliation, where it like just the way it works, the fact that it's not going to be off the GCD. I get that they say they don't want damage to be off the GCD. They want things to be respecting the GCD. I get that as a concept. At the same time, I'm not saying it feels like a big nerf. It's a big enough change to where I would imagine people are going to feel it's clunky, and it also makes me wonder just why Gore for Marauder is going to work the way Gore works. If we don't, I mean, I know that like the way Gore is going to work, and we'll talk about that later, is not the same as how Retaliation works, obviously. But I don't know. You're going to say you don't want damage off the GCD, but in other specs you're creating like damage windows off the GCD. It just strikes as odd to me.
The thing they did to Gore was weird, right? So it's on the GCD now, and I mean this is going into a little bit more detail than I want to talk about just yet. But the thing they did with Gore was weird because they put it on the GCD, but they also said, at least in the blog, that it was because of the changes to like Alacrity, which means you actually can fit in another attack during the window, even though now it's on the GCD. Does that make sense as a Marauder?
Well, yeah, no, it makes sense. See, this is the weird thing to me. Like, I imagine that the reason that they would take it off or not take it off the GCD, but put it back on the GCD, has something to do with the fact that one of the coolest things about Carnage was you can precast Vicious Throw into Gore without activating Gore first. Same goes with Twin Saber Throw, and I think that just added a complexity maybe that the devs didn't intend. But at the same time, it feels, or at least it reads, I don't know, it seems like a change that might slow down the spec, because the less things that I have to do off GCD as a Marauder, the slower things are going to get.
I don't know. It's... Putting Retaliation on the GCD, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. There was an attack... Retaliation is a lot like another attack that World of Warcraft Warriors got. I don't know what it was called. I think it has a similar name. That basically, you got to hit somebody when they hit you. And that was off that game's GCD too. So, I don't know. It's just a little crowbar of separation now between that game's Warriors and this one's, which honestly maybe needed to happen because warriors in this game are very, very, very much like WoW warriors.
Well, this is the thing that I think about when it comes to retaliation no longer being off the GCD. I worry about it less from a DPS standpoint and more from a tanks no longer having that as part of their snap threat rotation.
Yeah, I can see how that might be the case. The other thing about it is there's a few other things that will affect tank threat depending on utility choices that we'll talk about in a little bit. They did say, and I forgot to mention this, they did say that putting retaliation on the GCD allowed them to, quote, lower the rage cost and increase the damage done, so maybe it's okay for tanks. I think they can still reduce the cost of it, although don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. Yeah, and they also get a lower cooldown while Cyber Ward is active for tanks, so yeah, I don't know. That could be a significant part of their rotation then.
Looking at the thing they posted from the stream, retaliation costs no rage for a tank.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's pretty good for them.
Well, that'll do.
Because right now...
It reduces...
yeah, right now you can't get it to no cost, as far as I know.
But unless they've made other changes, that doesn't matter because you're always swimming in rage as a tank.
Ah.
Or fury, whatever it's called.
No, I think it is rage. Anyway, what else? Oh, yeah. I'm going to quote for them what they put in their developer blog about retaliation not proccing when you dodge in the other stances anymore. This change allows for Juggernauts that focus on dealing damage to use the ability more often in situations where they are not actively tanking an enemy, while effectively keeping the ability unchanged for Juggernauts that are focused on tanking. Well, one, I mean, the ability is not unchanged for those Juggernauts because of the GCD thing and all that, but that's beside the point. For the reasons I said earlier, this only works in PvP or if you're not accuracy capped. Because otherwise, in these situations, unless you're rage, you're never going to want to use retaliation anyway. You only use retaliation when you have a lot of rage as vengeance. In the current system anyway. Which, I mean, vengeance doesn't really have rage problems. Yeah, I bet you will.
I'll miss it as a Marauder. Like, it was always fun to just get retaliation procs in Council whenever I'm on Tyrants and just have, relatively free damage, because from a rage standpoint, I never really had a problem with resources in any of the specs.
Maybe the real answer, and the one they didn't say, is that they don't want, fun time DPS like that. I don't know how to describe it. Just random...
Fun time DPS?
They don't want DPS to have fun?
No. No, they want... I'm sure they want DPS to have fun to some extent. I'm saying they
Does it feel like a PvP change? Because if retaliation is not on the GCD and it doesn't respect it, you could basically front load damage to be more than a cooldown could handle, and they're worried about people getting global too much. It just that's the only way that I can think of it. I don't see how it being off the GCD is a problem for PvE. Tenebris, do you think it's a problem for PvP?
It kind of was for comps, specific burst hard swap comps, Double Carnage, because you would get the Ravage and then immediately Force Scream Retaliate, and that's just an incredible amount of way too much burst, disgusting burst.
Well, that's Carnage for you. Okay, what else do we have here? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to me like Vengeance will ever use it. So, I mean, retaliation is just not going to be a thing for a lot of people anymore.
I'm okay with that. I think that should just be a tank ability. But I do wish they kept it off the GCD.
Well, it kind of makes sense for a tank ability, right? I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, the other general warrior change that I noticed, at least it's in the calculator that's publicly available. Force Grip is channeled over 1.5 seconds. It can be channeled while moving, but it still applies the full 4-second stun. This seems like a really great PvP change. Tenebris,
Terrified.
The PvP implications there for a warrior only having to spend 1 GCD on you and then start DPSing you when he's not a tank.
It's terrifying. Although, to be fair, there's nothing else to interrupt her Jug, so I would be surprised if anybody ever got it off.
Well, you start getting stunned immediately when he starts channeling it, I think. It seems, at least from the tooltip I read, that seems like the case. So, like,
I mean, I'm only really talking about group PvP. Like, no one's ever going to let a Jug full channel
okay.
something, ever.
Okay. Alright, we'll go right into Juggernaut now. It seems like there's lots of good utilities, so that's cool. Every spec gets access to, like, Overwhelm, which used to be only in Vengeance, which used to actually not be in Vengeance at all until they decided, hey, this spec that we designed around getting people killed by Ravage, turns out people won't get killed by Ravage if they can just walk out of it. So they probably have to change that. And they did. There's one utility that I saw that I'm really excited about is called, what is it? Through Power. It's a top tier ability. It makes their Endure Pain increase their movement speed by 50% and grants immunity to movement impairing effects while active. So it's basically Hydraulics, except it doesn't protect you from physics. And I think Endure Pain lasts longer. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Not in that utility as listed in the calculator.
It doesn't make it last longer. I'm saying it. I think it naturally lasts longer than Hydraulics.
You mean
That
like
sounds
base
right.
Hydraulics versus base?
But that just sounds like Whirlwind bait to me in PvP.
Endure
Yeah.
Pain? Maybe. I mean, Vengeance is going to be really hard to CC with stuff like that, though. You got that. You got Warmonger, which getting attacked reduces the cooldown of your force charge. You can also get Thrown Gauntlet, which reduces the cooldown of your force push. So you're going to be able to charge more often, and even when your Unstoppable isn't up, you'll be able to hit Endure Pain and not get rooted and stuff like that.
No one's ever going to take Thrown Gauntlet in PvP. Ever.
See,
Really?
here's my question.
Never, ever, ever.
Shrillion Scream
Like-
costs no rage and reduce cooldown.
Reduced
on force
cooldown
push.
on a rage defense and Saber Throw immobilizes the target are both much better
See,
choices.
I brought this up. I brought up that reduced cooldown on rage defense is just fucking really good. But, I don't know. People were saying in arenas you don't necessarily want the reduced cooldown because you're never going to blow it more than once anyway.
Saber Throw route is better than less cooldown force push.
Here's my question:
Okay.
the increased speed that you get, is that going to make Doug better at kiting, or is it that it's too
How are they-
situational?
How are they going to kite anything? They can't really do
That's
damage
speed.
outside of
That's
range.
sweet hot speed.
Yes, they're really 50% is really fast. It's faster than base hydraulics, but how the hell are they going to kite anything when they can't do damage? But part of the thing about kiting, Justin, is that you got to be able to do damage while you're kiting.
I mean, you could also
You can
just like
force
give
screen,
yourself
and that's
time.
it.
Well, yeah, you could give yourself time to like be out of range of melee attacks and stay alive longer, hypothetically.
You can run away. Yes, you can't.
Yeah, that's when I
different
say
from
kiting. I don't mean kiting like how a sort can kite. I mean kiting like just being able to stay alive. Because previously, when I've PvP'd, anytime I saw a Jug, they can't really run away from you for dick.
Yeah, they can. I can get away in the Jug. What do you mean?
Well, you have natural charisma and natural speed, so I don't know what to
No,
tell you.
you got Intercede, you got fucking Chilling Scream, Force Push. You can get away pretty well. But yeah, this will make it easier to get away and not get. I think the actual thing is just the not getting rooted or slowed. More so than the speed itself. I mean, obviously the speed's big. But for PvP, not getting rooted is going to be pretty big.
Furion's a 1650 Jug. I'm sure he's probably the one who can say more about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Furion?
Yes. Just yes.
Yes, that's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, rooting. Rooting is the only thing that can really stop me. Because you have whatever it's called, whenever you leap and you're immune
Unstoppable.
to stuns and shit, yeah. So that powered with no roots after that is awesome.
One thing I did want to point out about the utilities, there's also a heroic utility called Intimidating Presence. It makes Saber Reflect last long. In fact, it's almost exactly like the Intimidating Presence that's in the Immortal Tree right now, but it's a utility. It makes Saber Reflect last longer, and while Sarisu form is active, generates a high amount of threat on all engaged enemies within 30 meters when activated. That sounds like a mandatory talent to me for threat. And also just because it makes your cooldown better. And I really thought that, they didn't want a mandatory talent.
No, there's mandatory talents in every tree, though.
That's true. As DPS, in PvE especially, you're probably going to want to take the Smash, apply as armor pen thing, for example.
The only other alternative is if you had two of the same class
Sure.
in your raid, and you said, "Oh, I'll do the armor pen, you spec into blah."
Well,
So, I guess that's nice.
To be fair, if you're a Juggernaut, you are always doing the armor pen unless you're tank. Like, that's just a thing. I'm talking like, the reason that you take the Smash one is to do AoE armor pen.
Oh, okay.
It's also so it gets applied more often, because otherwise you only apply it on, Sundering, and if you're Vengeance, Saber Throw. What else? Okay, we can get right into tanking now. From what I could tell, it looks roughly the same, except that it can't apply Sunder, which really doesn't matter anymore, because everybody and their dead pets and their sisters and their grandmothers is going to be able to apply Sundering. It seems that I think every class, except for, like, Operatives and Sorcerers, can apply Sunder. I know Deception can, AP can, Mercs obviously can, Snipers can. I don't know. That's already a lot. And it's way more than what we have right now. So the Juggernaut tank not applying Sunder is honestly whatever. Aegis Assault replaces Sundering for Immortal. It adds Shield Absorb and more damage reduction. Actually, it doesn't add more damage reduction because it looks like they took the damage reduction off of Crushing Blow. And instead they put a debuff on it that makes the target do Force and Tech damage reduction.
Well, that is essentially damage reduction.
Yes. I guess it is more in that. Actually, no. It's kind of not, though, because if you already had an Assassin or a Power Tech, that's not any more damage reduction. Because Combust right now applies to everything, and so does Wither. But now they just kind of split it, which is kind of strange. Immortal also still applies range and melee accuracy reduction. So, as I predicted, you're going to need two of the three tank classes to apply all possible tank debuffs. The Assassins are going to apply range and melee, and range and melee accuracy and range and melee damage reduction. PTs apply range and melee damage reduction and force and tech damage reduction. Jugs apply, as I said, range and melee accuracy, force and tech damage reduction. So if you have two of the three, you're good.
This is the thing that I'm not totally getting, and I remember when they were talking about the, at the time, not titled expansion, how when they were talking about balancing, they said, don't worry, for 3.0 we want to give all classes more utility. And I gotta be honest, I'm a little let down by the fact that almost all of the utility is just, your class can offer this kind of debuff on the boss at all times.
Yeah,
and
I will say I agree with you. I don't want to go off and just call it blanketly uninteresting, but I don't know, it's not really wowing me.
I mean, I think it is uninteresting to a degree. Like, for instance, if you're a sniper and apply shitter shot, or shatter shot, obviously,
yeah.
That's cool, I guess. Like, it has some, it costs something. It is a thing. Now it's like, oh, well, this attack that you were already going to do, it's going to apply this kind of debuff to the boss for X number of seconds, and it's just like, you're not really giving me utility. You're not making me choose anything. It's just something that happens coincidentally. Like, it's for some reason I'm just sort of let down by it. Like, whenever I heard the words like you'll be having more utility, I honestly assumed it was like we're going to be reworking some cooldowns. Maybe X class gets this, Y class gets that. Instead, most of the utility changes.
What, entrench, ballistic shield?
Yeah, I was thinking people would be getting abilities. I wasn't not saying that I'm upset that there aren't a bunch of new abilities. It's more just the way they went about it. While it's honestly kind of obvious and it's not bad for the game, it's not bad game design. It's just boring. Like, you're getting new utilities, but you're not really going to notice them because you're just going to passively do it.
The only time
I'm not making a decision.
The only time you're going to notice them is if you're going out of your way to min-max. Which, I mean, players like us will. But,
yeah.
I don't know.
But, like, the only issue I have is, like, right now, if you want to, like, sort of apply your trauma or your debuff of some sort, it's a rotational decision. There's a cost to it. Like when snipers do shatter shot, it's not exactly helping their DPS individually. It helps the raid. Like for instance, I know that in 3.0, battering assault will apply like melee vulnerability or whatever.
Yeah.
And I use battering assault all the time. It's not a decision I'm making where I'm being, at some level, it's a trade-off where it's like I give the raid this, but I lose this in return because instead of me using, like, let's say hypothetically, I use the new Force Scream, instead of that, I'm hitting this button for this rotation cycle. It's like I'm not losing anything, I'm just doing it passively. It's kind of frustrating to me. I'm not expecting things to get harder, but it feels like things are getting needlessly easier.
I'm going to disagree with you. Like, there's nothing hard about using Shatter Shot except for remembering to do it. It's just a really shitty... It's just currently the worst way to apply armor penetration in the game. That's all.
That's fair. No, that's
every
fair.
Every other class that can apply it just does it passively. So, in that sense, they're just streamlining it, and I like that part of it. I do agree with you that it's just... how to describe it? It seems like a ham-fisted attempt to get some diversity up in here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have too much to say about tanking Juggernauts. If anybody else has anything to say about them, please. But if not, we move on to Vengeance.
I think they're still going to be dominant in PvP, as they are now.
You think so? Yeah, I guess we know.
They're just getting better. They're just getting better. They're already amazing, so...
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to like the Retaliation being off the GCD quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because it's already kind of a slower of the tanks because it has less things off the GCD. But I don't know.
I mean, also,
Or at least it feels that way.
Something you didn't mention was the fact that you can give your whole team predation.
Oh, you mean that utility? What is it?
Yeah. Emboldening Scream.
Emboldening Scream. Is that where
Chilling
you
Scream increases movement speed. Yeah.
Oh, wow. 50% is actually kind of a lot.
It's essentially predation.
Yeah. In PvP, you would definitely take that.
Yep.
So, let me give you all my standard PvE build for Vengeance anyway. I would take Warmonger, Pathcarver probably, the one that increases your sweeping slash damage, and probably Pooled Hatred, or Unyielding. It doesn't matter which. Because you get CC'd all the time in PvE anyway. Because that's just the way things are. So it's good to get some rage out of it or whatever. In Masterful, I never take anything but the same two. The one that gives you more rage when you take area damage, and the Smash applies armor pen. But in PvP, I would definitely take the Emboldening Scream thing. That seems really good. Or maybe the reduced cooldown on Force Choke. I don't know. Juggernaut is definitely better off than a lot of other classes that I've seen as far as useful utilities goes.
Not terribly much for tanks, though.
Yeah, you're kind of like pigeonholed into a few, right?
Yeah.
You probably want to take, Sonic Wall, the thing that grants the Absorb Shield on your taunt. You're definitely going to want the longer Saber Reflect. I don't know if you want the reduced cooldown and rage defense or the Endure Pain run speed thing, but I don't know.
I would take the rage defense.
There's a lot of very interesting choices to make for jug tanking in PvP, depending on your comp and what comp
Yeah.
you're playing against.
Well, even
Oh,
in
I'm
PvE,
talking about PvE.
Yeah, in PvP, obviously, there's even more decisions to make there because, in PvP, you generally don't give a shit about using Threatening Scream or whatever. Or not Threatening Scream, but Chilling Scream. Anyway, I can actually talk with some detail about how Vengeance played because I got to play it at EA Redwood Shores last week. It is extremely fun. It is a lot like Live in that, it's all based around Ravage Reset and all that other shit. But unlike Live, I think you're going to want to hold on to Ravage unless Shatter is about to come off a cooldown, because generally you're going to want to press all your other stuff. Because in the new Vengeance, you're only going to get resets off of Shatter instead of Impale and Shatter. Which means that it's more worth it for you to press your other buttons if they're off cooldown than it is for you to press Ravage. Unless it's the beginning of the fight, where obviously you start with Ravage. Vengeance applies Beatdown, which is melee vulnerability, through Impale, and Armor Pen through, like, 3 abilities. Sundering Assault, Saber Throw, and Vengeful Slam if you take that particular utility. Vengeful Slam hits like a train, I'll say, relative to health levels. It's as if you're playing Rage, sort of. I mean, it hits significantly harder than Smash. It also, I mean, everybody's seen the ability, too. It's probably the coolest looking new ability they've added. Maybe the Mega Man cannon for AP can, like, compete with it, sort of, but it doesn't have as cool a sound. One thing I will say they didn't play up very much is how much more damage Sweeping Slash now does. I did notice this. For Vengeance, actually Sweeping Slash does even more damage because on bleeding targets it adds 25%. The dot spreading is just really easy to accomplish. I don't know if you're going to want to spread like the Force Scream dot, which is your weakest one, but you're definitely going to want to spread Shatter and probably Impale.
Vengeance has the best looking ability that I've ever seen.
Yes. Vengeful Slam is absolutely the best.
You're like a lumberjack with a 17-inch dick just smacking it down on the foreheads of every woman on the planet right now. I'm looking at it on Delphi. It's amazing.
Let's see. Yeah. I got to play this spec at length, actually. I played this character at the most in California. And I will say I very much enjoyed it. I enjoyed it on live. I enjoy it even more in 3.0. So for those of you who have a Juggernaut or play a Juggernaut, I would highly recommend you play Vengeance in 3.0. There is a non-zero chance I'm going to play this class as my main when the expansion actually hits. It's between this and Power Tech, because I also got to play that over there. But we'll get into that when we talk about snipers. We can move on to Rage now. We're going to combine this with you, Justin, actually, because Fury is basically the same.
Sure.
And I don't know that much about Rage. I did dabble in this when I was at Redwood Shores. Brief overview of what happens to Rage. It gets a single target option called Raging Burst, which everything that affects Smash will also affect Raging Burst. So when you're not just smashing kids, you're not in an AoE situation, you'll be using that, which is cool. I mean, Rage needed a single target option that was not, like, horrible. I don't know, does Rage currently do terrible single target damage?
Yes.
Okay. So they needed it.
Basically, yes, it did terrible single target. I mean, it was a usable spec. Like, I know Tenebris made very good use of it on Draxus, but it's not like something that you would bring to a high DPS check of single target variety.
People like me make good use of engineering during Draxus. It doesn't mean you want to play engineering on, like, anything else.
I don't know, I remember when Devasta tried engineering on Council just because he wanted to goof off and make us scared that he fell off the ledge every single time he rolled.
I didn't like that.
No, but I mean, I think, yeah, I believe that Rage is the lowest single target DPS spec in the game, because I think the only thing that comes close is AP/Tactics on Vanguard's PTs, and that was higher than Rage. I think the highest 1 mil Rage parse was something like 3490 or something. Tenebris, does that sound right?
What was it? What?
Highest Rage parse on 1 mil.
41?
That's not
Rage?
horrible.
No. 41? On a dummy?
I thought so. Or just short of it?
No. Vengeance has the 4K. Talking about Rage, the AoE spec.
I'm aware. I thought it beat 4K.
I don't know. I don't really...
Could be mistaken.
Whichever it is, getting Raging Burst will probably help out a lot for single target. Furious Strike hits like a train, by the way. I actually, like I said, I toyed around with it at EA Redwood Shores. I didn't play it at length because I actually don't even know how to play it on live. I've never bothered to learn, and it's just not a spec that interests me all that much. So I can't say I played it well. I just did it to see what was up. It's pretty decent. It feels like it has a lot of buttons. Like, a lot of buttons. Like, I don't really know what the purpose of Obliterate is, other than to make you press a button. But I'm sure that's mostly because of my unfamiliarity with the spec. It applies Armor Pen through Sundering and Smash if you spec into it, and Melee Vulnerability through Furious Strike, so it shares the exact same rate debuffs as Vengeance, so it doesn't matter which one you play if you're damage. I mean, assuming that their damage is comparable. Rage is obviously the burst spec, and Vengeance should be the sustain spec. Although to me, Vengeance doesn't have a lot of setup time, so I would call Vengeance also a burst spec, depending on what your cooldowns are up at the moment. Or at least if you need burst, you're not going to be hurt all that much by going Vengeance. I think that's probably a better way to put it. Okay, that's basically all I have to say about Juggernaut. Real fun, at least to me. Probably because it's not, something I've played into the ground. I guess we can move on to Marauders now, and I'm going to let Justin lead the discussion about this because I have a Sentinel, but I just leveled it for the Prestige unlocks.
I mean, Marauders changed quite a bit. Obviously, the most obvious is that you no longer have Retaliation, period. If you're not Annihilation, you're not going to have Rupture, which I'm actually a fan of because I like Carnage in all of the live iterations that I've played it in, but the weirdest thing to me was that Rupture just didn't thematically fit in with Carnage. So the fact that it won't be in Carnage anymore, I'm fine with that. Although at the same time, I am somebody who, looking at like the current outlook for 3.0, I feel like they're just taking too many abilities away from too many classes, and I worry that may bore people that have mained those classes.
I can
like
confirm
operatives. Like operatives are losing some abilities from their DPS and their healing, and it's just like I feel like they're probably going to get bored. And I know that even though I don't care about Rupture, I'm sure someone else cares about Rupture, and I'm sure that the more things that are taken out and the more things that are streamlined, while it may be better from a QOL standpoint, it's the people that just like play nothing but Marauder or play nothing but Operative or Jug. They're going to get bored by it, and they may switch mains. I know that all of the information that I've seen on Marauder, it's made me be like, these changes are probably going to be good for the class, but they're not good for me, and I'll try it, but I can't. I basically, when 12 XP started, I was like, I'm going to level like 4 Marauders. And currently, I've done half of that, and now I don't even feel bad that I've only done half of that.
I'm going to ask a stupid question. Did you use Rupture outside of Annihilation?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
Okay.
So in the way I would use it in Carnage, and insert joke of me using it Rupture inside of Gore, but no, seriously. When I used Rupture in Carnage, it was basically outside of a Gore window, and the way that I did it with the most recent Carnage was there would be 2 filler GCDs right before a Gore window, like where battering comes off cooldown, you battering, then Gore, and then do your Gore window. Right before that battering, there'd be 2 globals, and the first one would usually be a Massacre, and the second one would be a Rupture, and then I would battering and then do my Gore window. And that was the way that it lined up pretty nicely in the current Carnage. In the old Carnage, the basic idea, I never really found a specific place where it fit because there was more adaptation in the old Carnage, like pre-2.8 Carnage. But it was basically use it outside of Gore. I would usually try and use it just after like Berserk would fall off, where it was like I didn't need to use Massacre to get my 4-screen buff. That's just kind of where I would put it. Mm. So you did use it, and I parsed it far too many times because it was kind of annoying to me. I wanted to see if I don't Rupture and I just use Massacre more, would the additional hits of Massacre and the additional hits of the Ataru form procs, would that outweigh the difference because of the fact that Rupture in and of itself does hit harder than Massacre. baseline. And it ended up being almost a wash, but Rupture over like something like 100 parses when I used Rupture, like it was marginally higher, so I couldn't justify taking it out of my rotation entirely. The only problem is Rupture does have a cool use case in boss fights in Carnage, and it makes it an ease of target swapping. Like, if you have to go from one side of the room to the other and you want to put damage and then leave, you don't want to waste another gore window, I would like put in my entire filler rotation, then immediately Rupture. Yeah, exactly, and then leave. I can't do that. That is going to be a downside, but that's a very specific use case, and I'm fine with that not being there. I just worry that other people will not be fine.
So this is not like an elitist, oh, they're dumbing down my spec type thing they have a problem with. I'm not like judging you if you actually have that opinion. I'm
okay, so the elitist opinion I have on Marauder with what I'm reading about 3.0 is actually about Annihilation, which we'll get into after this. With Carnage, I'm not worried about it. I'm sure that it'd be hard to mess up Carnage. Like, they made changes right before 3.0 that even though it bothered people and that you don't get your double gore and there's less adaptation, it was still in a good place. And it wouldn't make sense to me for them to make that change and massively change it in 3.0, literally like 1 or 2 patches later. So, I mean, I'm not really worried about it being bad. I'm fine with Rupture not being there. I just worry that other people won't be. Now, Annihilation, we're going to have differences there. And the main reason I do is that... So, you get another dot, right? And that's great. It's
Force Gash, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah, it's Force Gash. It causes a bleed for 15 seconds. And this is where my elitism comes in. Rupture no longer has a cooldown. And that basically means that the interplay that Rupture had with Annihilation, you getting your Rupture procs, your reset proc, that's gone. Now, at some level, you'd sit there and think, well, isn't that great? I know that you and that Deeps and YOLO complain about it all the time during Phase 2 of Council, and that's true. But it is fun. It is fun to play with your rotation and mess around and fish for procs while you're in the middle of the fight, and there is some difference where it's like, oh, I didn't get my Rupture reset, that means that I have 1 extra Vicious Slash, and, you know, things will happen a certain way, and how many Rupture resets you get during a parse or during a fight, and how much Rupture you have under a Berserk window throughout a fight, that changes your high end, right? Like, it is a variable in your DPS. If you now take out the fact that I may or may not get a proc, it's going to do 2 things. A, it's going to mean that there's less adaptation in the spec, which it's technically fine from a raid standpoint. Like, it's more even-keeled. The reliability of it's going to be a little higher. The only downside is, because you're always going to be able to effectively reset Rupture on cooldown, you're never going to have spacing where it's not there. It's going to change your resource pool, like your rage. And I'm not looking at what they're saying. I'm not worried about it being quote unquote rage star. It just, the way it's being, it just looks boring. Just three different bleeds, just unique durations, annihilate on cooldown. For some reason, to me, that sounds boring. It sounds like it's... Because here's the thing about Annihilation. Annihilation was the least, quote-unquote, dot class that in this game, to me at least.
What do you mean?
You Deadly Saber on cooldown. There's no keeping track of Deadly Saber. And
well,
you Rupture...
Vengeance is the same. You don't keep track of your Vengeance dots.
Well, no, of course, but like to me, like the difference being, I can make my dots burstier with Berserk and Deadly, and I can basically... auto crit. I can basically decide I'm going to auto crit on my dots. I can make it to where I'm burstier. Like a lot of people would say, oh well, you in Nightmare Raptus for the DPS challenge, you need to be in Carnage because it's a burst spec and dot specs aren't good. It's like you can force burst into your dots as Annihilation. You literally just time your Berserk around it. You use an Adrenal, you Rupture, then you Annihilate, then you Ravage, and blah blah blah, and the thing dies and it's very quick and you do a lot of damage. And now you've got a long-term dot, which that's fine, but at the same time, it's now making it more of an actual dot class, and it's a melee dot class, like a real dot class. I'm just worried that it's going to be clunky, and I'm worried that it's going to be a significant departure from Annihilation, and if that's the case, I can see a lot of people not playing it.
I can see how that makes sense. I don't... Like I said, I leveled my Sentinel as Watchman, which is the equivalent. But I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near an expert on it, so I'll take your word for it. Annihilation applies internal elemental vulnerability as well as beatdown. Actually, every Marauder applies beatdown through Battering Assault. I think we mentioned. Beatdown is melee vulnerability. Okay, so what about Carnage? The new Carnage.
I mean, so you used to have your Deadly Throw, which would apply Immobilize and Trauma debuff. That trauma's been moved to Crippling Slash, and Deadly Throw is removed. So we don't have a ranged route, which I'm sure PvPers aren't going to be super hype about.
What's the range on it right now?
Oh, Deadly Throw.
10 meters.
10 meters.
10 meters.
12-second cooldown.
And Crippling Slash is obviously melee range, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, it's something that I guess you can call it a PvP nerf. But I gotta say, Carnage is really good in PvP. If PvPers complain that Carnage is nerfed in PvP, call me one of these little jackasses up high, but like I don't care. Like Carnage could use a nerf. Carnage, when played properly, is really, really hard to stop in PvP. Like it's Tenebris, correct me if I'm wrong, but like for ranked 4s, a dual Carnage tank tunnel hard swap team is really hard to counter.
Yes, it is. It's countered only by specific comp.
Yeah, and it's just I'm not saying that like, well, instead of nerfing Carnage, we need to move other things up, but it's just Carnage has been really good in PvP for a while, and if it's nerfed and it's no longer top of the pack, I'm fine with that.
Well,
I don't think that's a problem.
The Crippling Throw thing affects all the Marauders, not just Carnage, though.
Yeah, of course, but so the difference is, in a dot class, you lose a little uptime. I'm not really worried about that. And
what about if you're fucking Rage, man?
But if I'm Rage, I have Obliterate already. Like I can already get
meters.
to you. Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that I've used Obliterate outside of 4 meters on live. Maybe I'm a retard. No, Obliterate's 10 meters. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I still have that. And
Right.
like Rage also still has Force Scream that makes sense in its rotation, and Annihilation it doesn't really make sense at all. But I don't know, like Carnage, you don't ever want to use Force Scream like outside of a gore window. I mean, okay, in PvP, I'm sure there are use cases for it, like when you're just out of range and you don't have your leap up. But
Carnage
I just feel like
gets
it's specifically a PvP nerf.
Carnage gets the better Force Scream, right?
Correct. It gets
Okay.
its quote unquote auto crit.
So also like Vengeance.
Yeah, and it is. In addition to that, we are getting another passive that triggers an Ataru form attack on targets damaged by Sweeping Slash. So basically, we already were getting Ataru form hits out the ass in Carnage from Massacre, and now we're just going to get more, which I'm guessing is partially a way to counteract the fact that we don't have Rupture anymore. It's also interesting that we're going to have a use case for Sweeping Slash because there wasn't much of one in live.
Well, like I said, for Juggernauts, they really bumped up the damage on that thing, and I think they increased the target limit. I don't know if there's a target limit on it right now. I think there is.
Yeah,
It's going to be
and then Carnage,
pretty good.
they got a new ability. It's basically just a replacement for Force Scream. It's called Devastating Blast. I think it looks
Yeah.
pretty cool.
No, I said I
it-
asked if Carnage got the better Force. That's actually what I meant. The
Yes,
ability replacement.
It did get the better Force Scream. And interestingly enough, when you look at the quote-unquote pub side alternative, the Clashing Blast looks much better than Blade Storm, in my opinion. So
Well,
I'm glad because...
Blade Storm looks stupid, so I would expect
Yeah.
it to.
Well, pub side abilities in general, not always. There are exceptions. Like, in my opinion, Vanguard has some abilities that look better than PT.
Disagree.
But Sentinel-wise, I'm sure Tenebris would agree with me there, but Sentinel-wise, combat kind of got the short end of the stick. I mean, Blade Rush, it literally looks like you're hitting a pinata. Massacre looks like you're ripping something
Zealous
apart.
Strike, it looks like you're hitting a pinata with 2 hands.
Yeah, that's true. So you get your Devastating Blast. They've brought the damage of Gore down. I'm fine with that. I get they're nerfing things and that they're nerfing DPS baselines, and I'm getting that like Carnage has always been good in PvP. I always wonder, and maybe this is a game design decision that I don't understand, but instead of altering the main thing about the spec that people enjoy, like gore, why can't they just nerf things across the board a certain percentage until they hit what target they want to meet? That's something I've never understood. Is there a game design reason why that's not a viable alternative?
I'm sorry, repeat that. Miles is distracting me.
He has that ability. No, so basically, when they're talking about making gore quote-unquote weaker, like just making it to where it's not as powerful, I just wonder, why is it not a better alternative to just nerf stuff across the board until they hit their target?
You're getting... I don't think it's that. You're also getting Armor Pen. Like, I don't know what ability you have that's applying it. I think it's your new Force Scream. But you're just getting Armor Pen in general. So even when you're not in your gore window, you're going to be doing more damage. At least. Obviously not in a raid environment where you're going to have that anyway, but like when you're by yourself, when you're in PvP, on your own target or whatever, which you should never be doing, but whatever.
Yeah.
You will be doing more damage outside your gore window, so I think that's the reason why. But don't quote me on that, because I don't know. I am not one of the 2 members of the combat team, 2 confirmed members.
I don't know. The changes to Carnage in combat, they seem fine. It doesn't, like, nothing that I'm reading here, nothing that I've seen in streams has looked where I've looked at it and been like, oh, this seems very wrong. Fury, I'm interested in the most. Fury is a spec that is much maligned in PvE, and it's made fun of. Like, people have been making Smash Monkey jokes for over a year. The rotation is extremely
longer
easy.
than that.
I know, but it's stupidly easy to use in PvE. It's very easy to get decent numbers. There's no skill involved. Blah blah blah. What I find interesting is they're giving you this new ability. It's called Raging Blast, and it's going to be a single target smash, but you still get smash. And I like that because not only is it, it's a new button, but it's like you're still going to use smash and AoE. But now you have this option to use that window section of where you would put smash and put your single target ability. And to me, that's interesting because I'm going to have a rotational reason to adapt into a fight, and I like that. I like the idea of, like, let's say hypothetically, I'm doing Draxus and I'm doing it in Fury, as it's now called. Anytime I'm like inside of the bulwark bubble, like obviously, yeah, I'm using smash, I'm going ham, I'm DPS fluffing like it's no tomorrow. But then when it's time to push the boss, instead of me using smash, I'm now going to use this new single target ability. I'm going to use it in the same place rotationally, and it's something different. It's a decision I'm making. It may not be a difficult decision, it may be something that's obvious, but it's going to be fun, more fun than what it was on live. And this brings up another thing. If Rage is going to offer a single target burst now with having that new ability, there may be a question of what is the point of running Carnage, especially when certain...
I don't know about that.
Well, no,
there's lots of reasons to run Carnage.
No, of course, but see, currently your reasons to run Carnage outside of the fact that it's single target burst is that it offers so much utility. You're going to have the majority of that utility available to all 3 specs. People will still run Carnage, they'll just run it for a different reason. I don't think it should be considered the burst spec of Marauders anymore, based on like what's been announced. I would almost say that Carnage is now, it's an armor pen spec. It's not really a, like, because right now, honestly, Rage is a good burst spec. There is burst in Rage.
Sure.
It's just that now, if Rage is now going to be AoE and single target burst, there's like no point in not calling it a burst spec. I don't see the point in calling it AoE spec anymore.
Well, okay. Let's take a step back here. For both of the pure damage classes, I think snipers have 2 sustained specs, and I think marauders have 2 burst specs, and that's just the way it is. For snipers, the sustained specs, in my opinion, are engineering and virulence, and obviously we know what the burst specs for marauders are. I don't know. Fury, I will note, does not apply the same vulnerabilities as Rage does. Fury applies AoE vulnerability, which means that technically a Marauder should be smashing harder than a Juggernaut.
This is what's interesting to me about Fury. Now, Force Charge and Obliterate, they increase damage of Force Scream by 5%. You're still going to use Obliterate, you're still going to use Smash, you're using all these abilities you used to use, and now you also have a single target, and you're still using Force Scream. For all these specs that I'm seeing buttons taken out, it would appear that Fury has buttons added in. And I think that, A, that's going to make more people gravitate towards it who are bored by specs that have buttons taken out, but B, it's interesting to me that the spec that was the most maligned is the spec that seems to have been given the most care and the most touch. Like, just from a standpoint of everything, the changes they're making, I'm looking at it on the page, and I'm seeing the SWTOR stream, and in my head, it's just, that makes sense to me.
That is also the case for snipers, I will say. The spec that was the most maligned had got the most attention.
That kind of worries me, though, because if we go down the list of specs that were maligned and how they're in good places, like just from you watching them, I just wonder the specs that were in a good place. I'm not wondering, are they going to get nerfed just to bring rise to the other specs? But if they were in good places and they weren't touched with any sort of, I don't know, overarching changes, are we just going to get bored?
I mean, the short answer is yes. The long answer I'll say at the end of the show.
And this also goes to tanking. Tanking when they've mentioned it on streams, and it just, tanking is tanking, right?
Sure.
I don't, outside of things that I now put onto the target, it's pretty much the same thing outside of retaliate and little things here and there. There don't seem to be very many overarching changes to tanking. People already complained that tanking was boring.
There are also other things that go into why tanking is boring, though, and Tenebris can actually go on them at length, such as getting control of your character getting taken away from you.
Yeah, of course. But it's just if they're not going to make anything hypothetically or even realistically more interesting for tanks, we're still going to have the same problem that we have on live with many guilds and many servers where nobody wants to tank, and the people that tank do so begrudgingly. Milas is probably going to tank in 3.0, and we can make Mikey jokes all the time, but I'm sure he'll get bored after a couple months of tanking, and people will be pining to do DPS. I'm sure Tenebris would love to do tanking a certain number of lockouts, but after a while, it gets mind-numbing and boring because it's the same thing over and over, and there's just nothing to it. And I wish there was more to it, and it doesn't look like they're adding anything to give us, quote-unquote, more to it.
I'm sure he would like it a lot better if it were just more engaging. And by being more engaging, was more rewarding, numbers-wise.
The skill cap on tanking is roughly what a cat can do.
Yeah. I'll agree to that.
And that's why I'll be trying my hand at tanking in 3.0. I don't know how to tank, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn, so I'm pretty sure I can do it.
Yep, that's about all you need to do.
Okay. So, do you feel like you cover Marauders? Feeling good about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much really to talk about. I mean, Force Camouflage has a utility where it's called Expunging Camouflage, where you can remove cleansable effects when activated, but, I mean...
So, yeah.
There's not much to it. We got changes. Some of the changes are going to, change the landscape of Marauder, but if it's not obvious to you, I'm not super excited. There's nothing about this that's making me say, ooh, I want to play it. There are things that are worrying me where it's am I only going to be excited about one spec? And if I'm only excited about one spec, there's a great chance that I'm not going to main Marauder anymore. And that's kind of sad to me.
Yes.
I already decided before 3.0 was announced, I already decided I wanted to tank. I talked to people in DNT, and I've talked to tanks outside to try and get advice. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to tank next tier. That's what's going to happen. And I'm kind of glad that I said that before, because now I don't find myself feeling that great about Marauder.
This is something that we're definitely going to get into towards the end of the show. But for now, I do want to talk about the changes to Agents. Agents actually, as a baseline class, got a lot of changes. Let me bring up my notes here. Frag Grenade is no longer AoE for snipers. It will still be AoE for operatives. But as a baseline ability, it's only going to do its AoE damage to weak and standard enemies. As a consequence, its single target damage has gone up. Also, a bunch of abilities were removed, depending on what and who you are. If you're an operative, you're never going to cast Orbital again, because you don't have it. No Explosive Probe either, because it's only for engineering snipers. No Ambush for any snipers but marksmen. And, let's see. The Sniper Purge on evasion has been removed. In recompense, their evasion reduces force and tech damage taken by 75% while active. However, it sounds like evasion got kicked in the shitter, because the new tooltip says it only increases range and melee defense by 200% for 3 seconds. Which, to me, I'm reading that as it's a multiplicative effect on your baseline defense chance. So, I'm on my operative right now. My baseline defense chance is 7%. So, 200% of 7%. That's really not that much defense chance.
Well,
So you're gonna hit evasion and nothing's gonna happen, or at least nothing that you'll notice.
Well, here's what's interesting. Even if it wasn't multiplicative, even if it was additive, there is an issue where.
If it's
and I can give an example.
If it's additive, it works exactly as it's supposed to, like exactly.
Well,
as
but here's the thing. But here's the thing. If it's additive, if it's just like 200% or whatever, there are still situations where it wouldn't work. Like right now,
Retaliation.
previously, like let's say with when you would shroud orbs, where sometimes you would activate shroud and you still blow up to it. It's because like the way that it was coded, and they talked about this in a stream months back. The way it was coded was, well, we had it to where it was like 2,000% chance for it to not hit, so it makes sense that shit doesn't hit you.
Right.
But because it was 2,000%, there was still a chance it hits you, so you could still die from it. So even if it's additive, there are still chances where it will just fail. And I don't know, if you're giving me an ability with that sort of tooltip, I'd rather it just works and it's not based on a percentage like that. If it was like 30% chance to do that, I'd be like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But if it's like 200...
To be fair, I might just be reading too much into that, being paranoid. I will say that the live tooltip reads very similar to that one. But, I mean, in the developer blog, they made a point of, like, pointing this out. That evasion's not as strong as it was. So, I don't know. We'll see. Somebody's going to log on and immediately press evasion and look at their character sheet, I'm sure. Operatives still have a purge on their evasion, so that's good for them, I guess. Fuck that. I'm mad about my purge getting removed on Sniper. Other than all the abilities getting removed, though, there isn't a whole lot of general changes to the baseline class. So we're going to talk about operatives. Tactical Advantage will no longer grant a passive boost to damage and healing, which is probably good because, I don't know, was sitting on one tac ad for the damage boost a thing? Or the healing boost?
Yes,
coincidentally, sometimes it depended on a lot of things, but yeah, a lot of the time it was.
Okay, so that's like it's probably best that they streamline that because, like, when it wasn't a good situation, or when it wasn't a good idea to do it, I'm sure some people were doing it anyway, thinking it was. It's just not quite.
That was a needless complication in the class, to be totally honest.
It wasn't intuitive.
It was a skill cap check that was not intuitive. Like, an intuitive skill cap check for operatives would be Acid Blade. The tac ad is not a very intuitive check, but I don't know. I feel like they're streamlining operatives too much, but go ahead.
It was like once every fourth rotation, you would drop off your last tac ad because it would come back up before your next crit set of dots. It was stupid. It was really complicated for no reason, so I'm glad that's gone.
Yeah. Culto Injection is not going to be available to non-medicine operatives, which I kind of like, because in its place they get Culto Probe, which to me, from a self-healing standpoint, seems a lot better. Like, a lot better. You're not going to be... I mean, yes, it's way less burst, and, I don't know, it probably will take longer for you to top off. But I think you're going to be able to keep yourself at a higher average level of health with probe rather than injection.
You're just gonna flatten the damage profile a little more. Like you won't
As
be able to like boost yourself up as quick, but it will flatten the damage profile.
That appears to be a PvP change, and as a general rule, I like the removal of burst healing from DPS. So
yeah,
I'm
it
upset
is,
about that.
it is probably for the best, I would say.
Although it does kind of terrify me that everyone's going to be starting with a bubble and Culto Probes rolling on them every round now.
That is true, because there's nothing really stopping them from doing that. And if you're playing against like DPS mercs, they're going to be able to fucking emergency scan people.
I'm kind of okay with that as far as utility, but we'll see.
Okay, what else? They also took out Hidden Strike, so that's how many things removed from operatives? Explosive Probe, Orbital, and Hidden Strike. That's 3. I don't mind this one so much because they rolled everything that Hidden Strike once did into Backstab.
Well,
which
that's
is fine.
kind of
that's
like
that's just a button off my bar that I didn't need to have taken up.
Well, I mean that's definitely true, but at the same time, it's just more crap that they've just funneled into Backstab. Like you're already getting rid of think of this from a concealment standpoint, right? So, Acid Blade's now a passive, and
Yes.
Hidden Strike isn't a thing. It's just all rolled into one ability. That's a lot you're getting rid of.
I don't think so.
My only
I very much
criticism-
disagree with the idea that Acid Blade should be inactive. Acid Blade is a stupid
My only
ability. It's fine as
criticism.
passive. Go ahead.
The only criticism I have of concealment is that like they're not having the go for the global gold anymore with open hidden strike, shiv lacerate, then backstab vanish hidden strike because that will global someone if they're not doing it right, and they can't do that anymore because they don't have that second cooldown on hidden strike. But we'll see if that actually changes.
It's true, but
'Cause
maybe
that
maybe
was,
they
like, their
didn't
one
want you to
thing.
be able to do that.
Yeah, but that was like their one thing that they were actually scary about was if they popped everything and went on you, like you would probably die if you weren't
I
an
mean,
assassin.
it's not like operative DPS were just out there just killing everybody all over the place
Oh, I guess I
in
should have
PvP. So
mentioned this when talking about general operative stuff. Cloaking's Ring doesn't eliminate healing done or received. And all ops get the 10% crit raid buff. Okay, let's talk about medicine. And people are going to freak out. Because this was actually written, this is official communication from BioWare, I will quote, "Overall, medicine healing was too good during Rise of the Hutt Cartel, so players of the discipline should brace themselves for a rebalancing that might seem a bit extreme." That is stronger language than we are used to from BioWare. They specifically referenced that operative healers could trivialize PvE content that they didn't want trivialized. I don't know what specifically they might be talking about, but I don't know. There's going to be a big shakeup.
Think about Council, Rom, where ops could do 280k healing and 280k damage in
That's
the
true.
phase 2 check.
That is true.
Because you just roll hots and then pop all your attack hits on damage.
I mean, operative healing was in everyone's review. Whoever healed it, too easy to recover from, too easy to do good heals on, too easy to fluff the raid. Everything about it was easy. Like if you bottom out on a merc without vent heat, you're kind of screwed for a bit. You bottom out on a Sork, you're kind of screwed for a bit. You bottom out on an operative with being able to shiv a target, you can get back in 4 globals. Like everything about operative healing was ideal for recovering.
Yes.
And it's just like...
And it doesn't look like they changed that particular part of it. It sounds like they changed other... Well, they added more costs to stuff like surgical probe costs energy now. And shit like that. Whereas I don't think it does on live. Please. Yes, okay, good. I'm not completely ignorant as to what healers do.
I mean, I'm sure that the nerf will be complained about ad nauseum in the forums and on streams and even by healers that are capable of doing it well, but it's been stupidly easy for a long while. And I'm fine with the idea of nerfing classes that were just face roll easy and were extremely rewarding.
Yes, I'll agree to that. Right now they get a passive increase to healing done after executing a tactical advantage, which, I don't know, fine. Kolto Waves is their new ability. It kind of looks cool. I wrote it down as the Force Storm of healing, because you just sit there and channel it. The reason I like it is because it makes operatives stand still. Because honestly, I hate how slippery they are, especially in PvP. I'm sure operatives themselves probably don't like that. And like I said, Surgical Probe costs energy. Recuperative Nanotech will apply the plus heals taken buff, and they will apply the internal elemental damage reduction on infusion. So as with tanks, you're going to want 2 of the 3 healers in your group to get all the possible healing buffs. But that's honestly all I have to say about medicine. I don't actually heal with the spec. Furion does. I don't know. Do you have
So
any
does Tenebris.
And Tenebris does. Do you have any commentary on what they seem to be going for there? Because if not, that's fine.
No.
The ever eloquent Furion.
All right, we'll jump
His
right into
baby
concealment.
talks more than he does at this point.
For concealment, Acid Blade's not a passive, which I'm totally fine with. Acid Blade was just a dummy check. Did you press your Acid Blade? Okay, if you didn't press your Acid Blade, you don't get to do damage. That was basically what it is to me. They have a couple of new abilities. Obviously, they have a replacement for Shiv, but Crippling Slice sounds pretty fucking killer. I'm a little bit actually concerned about it. It prevents you from moving and turning. It costs no energy. It does decent damage. In fact, tooltip-wise, it does more damage than Rifle Shot, which means you're going to be using it for a PvE filler. If you can't turn versus a melee guy, and he gets behind you, you can't hurt him. Like, even with the new cone on range attacks. So I'm a little bit concerned about what that's going to mean for PvP. Obviously, the cooldown's a little bit, is long enough to where they can't do that to you all the time. They're going to be able to get in their backstabs or whatever. But it's still, I'm worried about it. Veiled Strike, the replacement for Shiv, applies tech vulnerability. And, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Volatile Substance, which is just weird. It seems like something that should be for lethality, honestly. Whenever a dot ticks with Volatile Substance up, it just hits really hard with internal damage. So I don't know, I guess it's like a little bit of burst when your dots tick. But it's on a long cooldown anyway, so I don't know. That itself causes internal elemental damage vulnerability. To me, I mean, I was just eyeballing the changes. I didn't actually get to play it in California. Concealment seems like it's in a better place, although it's in a decent enough place on live. But, I mean, I only play Concealment very casually, so I really can't say whether or not it's going to be better.
I think that the number of people who are going to say whether or not it's better is going to be a literal handful of people that will be 4 people, and if those 4 people don't like it, if the majority of the non-4 people like it, then it's not an issue. It's, I don't know, I don't mean to disparage the Raulos, Kesmet type players of the world, because, I mean, it would suck if they no longer enjoyed what they were doing, but if, more people played Operative because of certain changes, or more people enjoyed it, or were able to play it competently, I would imagine that's probably for the better good of the game.
I would say so. Do they actually play Concealment, or do they play Lethality? I didn't actually know. I guess they would play both.
Concealment. I mean, Raulos did a very good Lethality operative guide, which is about to be obsolete in 1 or 2 days. But in raids, Concealment was the spec to go. I know that when Crack got Deposer on his operative, when he did it as a DPS, he actually did Counsel and Lethality, which is funny to me, but he said it was fine. So, I mean, people have used it. It's just that, the issue is the procs were not consistent, and they sort of dwindle down, and you kind of get screwed by RNG. Much more screwed than even when people used to complain about not getting their 4-screen procs on Carnage. Much worse.
I've played Lethality on some of the fights in TP. It was better AoE. It wasn't terrible. I don't know. It was okay.
Ralos brings up something good. With concern to, what is it called? Volatile substance. Operatives would have lost a lot of burst with the removal of explosive probe. So having volatile substance probably makes up quite a bit. Okay, lethality. This spec is a little bit strange. A lot of ability names got changed, like Toxic Blast is the new Weakening Blast, and the new Cull is called Corrosive Assault. These only got changed for lethality operatives. It did not get changed for virulent snipers. I don't know why they got changed.
I just like Toxic Blast. That sounds better than Weakening Blast. Weakening Blast makes it sound like I'm hitting on a girl and her knees got weak. Doesn't? I don't know. It feels weird to me. Toxic Blast is cool.
I guess. I don't know. Really know what the difference is. I will say that the new Toxic Blast works exactly like the new Weakening Blast, which is to say it applies weapon damage, and then when your dots tick, more weapon damage. Okay, let's see. The new Corrosive Assault, the new Cull, is exactly like it used to be, which is different from Snipers because it acts differently. Or, the Sniper one acts differently. The Sniper one makes your dots tick. The Operative one has its own internal damage component. So I don't really know why that's a distinction. I don't know why they have to make them act differently. This is like one of the only specs where the new shared tree and the old shared tree act pretty differently. Or at least they have superficial changes in their abilities. They have a new backstab replacement called Lethal Strike. It does not have a positional requirement, which sounds pretty great for them, honestly. And it causes bonus internal damage that I believe interacts with their Weakening Blast if it's anything like the new Lethal Shot for Virulence. Carbine Burst will spread Corrosive Dart, so that's their dot spreading technique. I don't actually know if I like that as much as the Corrosive Grenade thing for snipers, but I'll get into that in a minute. The Corrosive Grenade thing has its own limitations, primarily it being just really small. Okay, honestly I don't play a whole lot of Operative. As some might be able to tell by watching the stream, I'm just kind of messing around, doing quests. So I can't really comment intelligently. If any of you play Operative for DPS, I'm ready and willing to hear your commentary on these changes. It doesn't sound like, honestly, that lethality got changed that much, other than the names getting changed. Honestly, I will say it's great. The quality of life change of Weakening Blast getting changed the way it did, it having no charges and just doing damage for you, that's great. I love that. It took too long in coming, and but it's great for both operatives and snipers. That's like a big thing.
Honestly, like the fact that it's not being changed much, in my opinion, is probably a good thing, because if lethality took the stupid, if lethality operative on live was just, you just take the stupid RNG aspect of procs out of it, like where you can sort of always know what the hell you have to do, it's an awesome spec. Like if all the procs line up properly, it's really fun. It's just that it has a terrible QOL on live. So if it's basically the same thing with minor tweaks, and the procs, are consistent, then it's going to be fun. I mean, it's simple as that. I feel like as long as they fix that, like, it'll be in a good place. And because basically nobody plays Operative, the fact that it hasn't been changed much is probably not an issue, because it's a very small pool of people that have been playing that for a while.
Are the few people who play Operative going to get bored? That's my question. Because I'm gonna spoil the sniper section for y'all. I'm bored. I'm really bored. They didn't change enough, so I'm bored.
I feel like the reasons that someone not liking operative DPS anymore would be more about concealment having so much taken away from it, as opposed to lethality not being much different.
Ralos is enlightening us in the chat. It is, I mean, the no positional requirement on Lethal Strike is really good, obviously. That's just a given. It says Carbine Burst spreading dots isn't great, but lethality has a lot more tacticals and concealment, so they actually have the stuff to spend on Carbine. It says there's one big change for lethality operative other than the removal of the main proc RNG, which I believe is the Cull reset that he's talking about. He's also saying Toxic Blast grants a TA, which it doesn't right now. Weakening Blast does not grant a TA. So that's good. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see, even with all these changes to quality of life and stuff like that, I'm not sure that we're going to see that many more DPS operatives. Maybe some, like, jilted healers are going to try it for funsies.
I think jilted Marauders could try it too.
Maybe, but in my opinion, there are better choices than that. Like,
namely, how much you enjoy playing your Jug.
Yeah. I mean, not just the Juggernaut, I think the Power Tech's probably a better choice too. I don't know. Operatives do have some pretty good passives that gives them some pretty significant damage reduction. But, I don't know. It seems to me like you're probably going to want the heavy armor anyway. But that's just me. I mean, obviously none of those classes are stealth classes. If you really like a stealth class, you're going to want that. I don't know. Just depends on your playstyle, I guess. And yeah, Ralos, we did mention that since the tacticals no longer give you a healing and damage boost, you're not going to want to hold on to stacks anymore, which is good. I like that, actually, because it's more intuitive. Okay, that's honestly all I have to say about Operative, to be honest, unless Ralos has any more input he would like to submit through the chat. I'm going to go straight into Sniper now. Not a whole lot of general changes other than what I already mentioned about Frag Grenade, Ambush, Explosive Probe. Orbital Strike still hits like a wet noodle. I can confirm that because I got to play a Gunslinger in California, and I got to test everything. So it's not really that exciting. One thing they did change that I really enjoy is Suppressive Fire hits like 8 targets and does a shitload more damage. I mean a shitload more damage. It's actually worth the energy it costs to cast it. Because right now, you only cast Suppressive Fire to like mark a location on the map if you don't want to use raid markers, or as a joke, or to pull people out of stealth. But that's it. It does like no damage. I think on a single target, it might be more worth your while to press Rifle Shot. It's a tough contest between what do you call it? Suppressive Fire and like Shatter Shot as far as damage goes, which is really pathetic. Shatter Shot, speaking of that, will no longer apply Armor Pen, but it still applies Trauma, so that's cool, I guess. I was kind of wondering about this. They kind of rolled in Marauder Trauma and Marauder Root into one ability. Could they have done that for snipers, or would snipers being ranged make that too good?
I'm usually positive and optimistic about like BioWare development when it comes to balancing. I honestly don't think that they thought that far into it. I can't
you don't
imagine
think that was
that
like
they did.
planned or whatever?
I don't think it was. I think that it was something that happened, and it's like, oh, well, this is a thing. Okay, all right. I don't think they even considered whether or not it would be too good.
Well, do you actually think Crippling Slash is too good in the new thing?
No, I'm saying when you're saying maybe did they not do that for snipers because it would be too good to do that for snipers.
Okay.
I'm saying I don't think they considered that. I think that they gave Marauders their chain as just sort of an emergent solution to wanting to get rid of something. And for snipers, they didn't really have to get rid of something in that vein. So they didn't find a reason to sort of like package everything in nicely.
Like, root trauma is kind of scary, thinking about it.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, it's a melee attack, which if they roll...
For Marauder, I think it's okay, but giving it to a 30-meter root trauma is kind of... 35-meter root trauma is pretty scary.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think that's why those are still two different abilities. Okay, let's see. All snipers get Diversion, which is now an AoE. It's about the size of Suppressive, or maybe the old Suppressive Fire. It's about the size of Corrosive Mine, I think it's called, for Virulence, which is pretty good. They buffed the shit out of Lay's target. It now affects Explosive Probe, Ambush, or Cull. Target acquired did not get changed as far as I could tell. It still grants useless accuracy and armor pen that mostly benefits marksmen, so I don't like it.
It's a PvP cooldown.
Do you need that accuracy?
Yes.
I mean, you still use it in PvE. A lot of the time you use it for the energy return, but yeah, I don't know.
Isn't target acquired hypothetically better for gunslingers than snipers because they have an offhand that can miss?
Yes.
See, that's something to me that I've never understood. If there is an ability that is like clearly better for one faction because of the fact that it uses an offhand, it seems like an odd bit of balance there.
That's the only ability I can think of that is. Like, in all of the cases, I would rather just use one weapon than two. But that's just me, I don't know.
That's fair.
Okay, what else? What else do we have here? All snipers will apply range vulnerability by casting Corrosive Dart. Oh, one thing I did want to mention about the utilities. They took all the OP bullshit about Entrench out of Marksmanship, which I fucking love. Fuck Marksmanship. Fuck 'em hard. Half the reason you would spec into Marksmanship on a lot of these fights is because they had the fucking godlike Entrench that gave you 60% AoE damage reduction and a lower cooldown. All of that shit got rolled into utilities. So I really, really enjoy that. And I'm like one of the few snipers who actually despises marksmen, so it just really tickles me. So in a broad test-like situation, which I hope never happens again because that was a stupid fight, Virulence would just shit all over Marksmanship because Marksmanship would no longer have that survivability advantage. Okay, I'm going to talk about the actual specs themselves. Marksmanship gets a stacking snipe up they'll have to keep up rotationally, which should make the actual playstyle a bit more interesting. I will say, having played it, it was not interesting enough for me to want to play it any more than I already do. It is otherwise very much the same. I'm sure there are minor nuances that people who like Marksman a lot better than I do would probably find out. Penetrating Blast has a cool sound to it. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It provides Sunder on Penetrating Blast, so it's now the only set. Otherwise, if you like Marksman now, you will very much like it in 3.0. If you don't, you still won't. And if you're tired of it, you're still going to be tired of it. Engineering got changed quite a bit. Much like, well, actually, I would say it got changed even more than Rage and Fury. EMP Discharge is no longer a cooldown resetter. It is just an actual attack that applies to whatever you've got Interrogation Probe on. It just does energy damage on a cooldown. Frag Grenade is in your single target rotation, and it applies electrified railgun stacks, which is weird. Like, fucking weird. Out of any agent spec, engineering is going to use Frag Grenade the most, I would say. There's no cooldown on Plasma Probe, so it can be moved. You can still only have one out at a time, so when you like recast it, it'll just change. The other thing I noticed is that Orbital is like a 1-second cast for engineering. So I believe that will be used in their single target rotation. I played this only a little bit at in California. It's fucking really weird. It felt like there weren't enough GCDs to go around, but again, I didn't like spend a whole lot of time trying to make it work. The other thing is we didn't have ships, so I wasn't able to like go onto it and use a dummy. I could have gone to the fleet, but it was whatever. I just kind of like ran around on Rishi and attacked things. I'm still a little bit skeptical about how viable this spec is in PvE. I'm sure if the boss is one that doesn't move a whole lot, it'll be just fine. Like it seems like it did. It seems like it did admirable damage. The problem with it, as I see it, is that 1, it has setup time comparable to Virulence. 2, the positional requirements necessitate a tank who's going to cooperate with you. A tank and a boss, and just a fight in general that will cooperate with your positional requirements. Like, if Orbital's part of your rotation and Plasma Pro, that's 2 things you've got to make sure the boss is standing in. So from a DPS perspective, I don't think it's gonna take anybody's like favorite spot, at least in most fights when the boss moves. Other than that, though, it's a good effort. I'm sure in PvP it'll be fine, because you can move the plasma probe and all that other stuff. It also just has EMP discharge will just stun your target now, so that sounds pretty good. So now we can talk about my favorite spec in the game, or what was my favorite spec in the game, Virulence. I forgot to mention this for lethality, but Virulence and lethality dots will last for 24 seconds now. As a consequence, there is no lingering toxins. But there is a pseudo replacement for lingering toxins that activates on cold damage only. And by that I mean if you cast Cull during the lingering effect, it'll proc the damage, but they just won't have their own ticks. So if you want to squeeze in a 3rd Cull per rotation, you can. I'm not actually sure which would be the better rotation. I didn't get enough time to actually parse it. Virulence will spread Corrosive Dart by casting Corrosive Grenade, which isn't any bigger than before, so that's kind of a problem. As far as all the dot spreading mechanics, it is definitely the most limited in what you can hit with it, because it's unit targeted and it's only 5 meters long, or 5 meters in radius. Vengeful Slam is, I believe, also 5 meters, but you can like stand where you want to spread it, so you can stand between what the target with the dot and the target you want to spread it to. Whereas with Corrosive Grenade, you can only unit target stuff. So that seems like a problem to me. Let's see. Lethal Shot is a replacement for Snipe. It does its own internal damage component. I can confirm that it interacts with a new Weakening Blast, which does weapon damage on dot tick. So I do believe after your first Cull, you're going to be casting as many lethal snipes as you have the energy for. The problem is you probably won't have the energy to cast it like 3 times, I believe it is, before Weakening Blast will fall off, unless you use an energy return mechanic. Or unless you get like really lucky crits, like the luckiest crits in the universe. Cull works a little bit differently in that it doesn't have its own internal damage component, it just makes its dot ticks, but I mentioned that before. I don't know if that's going to be an actual nerf. It really depends on whether or not those dots do as much damage as the old internal component. I'm going to render judgment on this spec. I'm tired of it. I don't really like it anymore. It's not really all that different from before, except I have less abilities I can choose to use. With the removal of Explosive Probe and Ambush, there's just not a whole lot to get excited about. Nothing new was really added. Like, there are no new abilities for this spec. Lethal Shot is not really a new ability. The animations are just boring. The rotations aren't really changing much. And this is just applying to snipers in general. So really all snipers are getting that anybody should really care about, outside of the very few people who really like NG and who really like playing it, are quality of life changes. The ones that I mentioned, like the utilities that make it so that Marksman is not by far the most survivable spec in certain situations. And the Weakening Blast change. Shit like that. Since honestly, I expect more from an expansion than a quality of life change to my favorite class. So I'm announcing it first here. I am not going to be playing a sniper as my main come 3.0.
Have you decided what you will be maining, or is it just
Juggernaut.
not sniper? Power Attacker Jug?
Yeah.
All I know is, and this is like more poking, minor fun, not all that serious, we're about to see some like melee bias strategies and ups. Here we go!
Maybe. Power Tech really isn't melee, so there's that.
If you choose Jug, it's going to be beautiful.
What I play will be largely dependent on what works best in the content. And while Jug did get a whole lot of cool shit, it still has to be in melee range to do damage. So it's like 75% chance Power Tech, 25% Jug, if anything.
I mean, I know that I will be glad to see people switch up mains, because, like, to be honest, like, I get bored of watching someone stream the same thing a lot. Like, not bored like of the play, but just like I can't imagine that it's fun for you to just sniper all the time. I mean, you can basically sniper one-handed.
Well,
like Deeps always makes jokes about that. Like, it's not like, I'm not saying that sniper is like easy as tits and everything else is harder, but like, you're just a stationary glass cannon, and it's like the same thing over and over. And I know that you don't like things that are different, but like, I don't know. I'm kind of excited that you're not going to be snipering, just because sniper I watch it and sniper just seems boring. When YOLO snipers, it seems boring. Like, sniper just looks boring to look at, and I'm sure that it's fun at some level, but good lord, it'll be fun to see less people snipering.
It was fun, but I'm tired of it. If that makes sense. Like, I'm not saying it's not fun, or that people won't have fun in 3.0. I'm saying I've done it enough to where I don't want to do it anymore. Especially since I'm not getting anything that's going to make the gameplay refreshing. Like, I don't enjoy engineering enough to want to make that my go-to thing. The other thing is, for the limitations I already said about engineering, the whole positional requirement thing and the setup time, I don't think engineering's actually going to be all that great outside of very stationary targets. So that's the other reason why I won't really bother with it. Engineering's the only spec that got changed a whole lot, and I don't enjoy it that much, and it's probably not that viable. I have a real problem, honestly, with the fact that nothing's going to be refreshing about this.
This speaks to a bigger issue than just sniper, in my opinion.
This is actually the discussion I wanted to have. Despite sweeping changes to the system, has disciplines really changed that much?
No. It's made it to where,
outside of a few outlier specs like engineering, obviously.
I mean, to be honest, like what it's going to be is, instead of me respecking with 40 some odd button presses, I'll respec in 7. I don't see many utilities where I'm like, I already wouldn't have taken this in live. I'm not seeing a situation where it's this wildly different thing where it's like, oh my god, what am I supposed to do? There's a learning curve to how I use this. There's a discipline calculator up on Dolphy's site, and it all seems fairly intuitive. It also seems like just a graphical refresh, like, oh, we got better designers, we're going to put this in a nicer package. It's no longer tree system, it's a box system with modules.
I want to be fair with my criticism here. The discipline system is better than the old skill tree system from a design perspective. Like,
yeah, I agree with you there.
The skill tree system has just a bunch of fucking uninteresting choices. Like, Waylay, I'm always going to want the damage on my backstab increased. Like, whatever. I'm going to take that anyway. It might as well be passive. But as far as the way classes play, again, outside of outlier specs like engineering, not a whole lot's getting changed. Like, you might say power techs are getting changed. They're not really. Their specs are just trading places. Yes, Miles is right, and this is a point we made earlier, or a few shows ago. It is going to be much easier to balance classes in the discipline system, and that's why another reason why it's better from a design standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, the discipline system as opposed to the skill tree system, it is better, obviously. The problem is the better system is not being utilized for any fun changes.
Yes, it's not. For veteran players, I would highly encourage you to consider changing classes. Because if you've played your class for a long time, it is extremely likely that not enough will change in your day-to-day gameplay for you to stay interested. I already know that is going to be the case with me, because I've played enough of the new Sniper in California to actually make that decision.
I would encourage everyone to learn at least one new class in 3.0. It's a good time to do it.
Yeah. Well, people
Even
should
if you're going
you
to
should
stick
be
with the same
versatile.
main.
Yeah, you're right. You should be versatile anyway. But just from an enjoyment perspective, try playing something else. I might be conflating my experience with that of the majority population. Like, I might be worrying about nothing. But I kind of think Shadow Reverend could have like the greatest story they've ever written for this game. It could end up not mattering in a few months if people are bored while playing. Like, I'm somewhat fearful that we might just have another population die off. Which, granted, that's going to happen anyway, but it might be a bigger than it has to be. It might be a bigger one than it has to be.
What I worry about is when you go down the list of what we're getting for the new expansion, I'm going to try and think out of the terms of what I get out of this. Because I get 2 raids, and that's important, and that's great,
Yes.
and we're happy about that, and that's going to have legs to it. I'm thinking for the regular community, outside of those 2 raids, how much of the new content has real, actual replay value to people?
Exactly. That's my problem.
The
feature list
those
is...
flashpoints are not going to be done over and over again. I'm sorry, they won't.
The new ones
We're not-
won't because they're tacticals, and the old ones won't because why would you do hard mode versions of old flashpoints when you can just like go into a story mode operation and get better gear? And the operation is new.
Yeah. I mean, and this is going to be something where I kind of walk back on a previous view I had originally when they announced 3.0, and it was shown that PvPers weren't going to get any new maps or anything. I originally kind of was like, well, yeah, but I mean, you look at this discipline system, and of course you're not getting new maps. Look at all these changes. And now that we're looking at these changes, I'm finding that too much of it is tiny little tweaks. And it's just like, to be honest with you, I can no longer justify in my head saying it's okay that PvPers didn't get new maps because you have the new combat system. Because the new combat system is relatively to what we've been seeing, it's old. There's not much new about it.
They might
and
actually...
PvPers
They might
are
get more
going to
use
get
out of the
bored.
utilities than we do, though.
Yeah,
to
of
be
course.
fair.
I'm sure that they will. But like, when I'm looking at the longevity of the content, unless there are PvP maps coming soon, I mean like 3.2 soon, people are going to get bored out of their minds. Like, you're going to do a few flashpoints leveling up. Even if you're like casual or not casual, you're going to do a couple on your character, and then when it's done, there's not going to be a real reason for you to do it again. I cannot imagine a situation where these flashpoints are going to have some wild replay value. They're not going to make Lost Island 2.0 where everybody has like a murder boner towards it because it's hard. Because you got your tactical, right? You got your solo mode. That's not going to be difficult. So there's not going to be any real replay value there. And for a story replay value, there will be an immersion RP standpoint where it's like, oh, my Marauder did this, now I'm going to take my Jug through this and do different conversations. There will be that. But there are only so many combinations. And at some point, the flashpoints will no longer be considered content to a lot of these casual players, right? So then you get your operations. It's 2 new ops. Yes, that'll have legs to it. But operations aren't played by the majority of the community. And so we look at it as we don't have PvP content. We don't have GSF content. Most of the content that everyone has access to is a discipline system that's basically the same stuff, just rehashed in a new package. And what? Yeah, there's a planet. But I will submit to you that when McKeb came out, we were all excited. And very soon after McKeb came out, you could read that to say after your first character was done, most people hated McKeb.
Oh, no, I love McKeb.
A lot of people hate McKeb.
I hate the shit out of McKeb.
I know that Rom, I know you're one of the people that actually still likes it. Almost everyone I have spoken to hates McKeb. And it happened right after their first run through. I like McKeb, it's beautiful. I get really annoyed every time I have to go on that planet. And I worry that, I'm not saying that they're incapable of making good planets. By the way. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're incapable of making good planets, but I'm just saying that unless the new planets are just wildly fun, there's just the content we're getting, while it's more than I thought we would get when the press release came out, where it's 2 ops, I thought we were only getting 1. Now I'm just actually, this worries me. I'm actually kind of afraid for the community, because people are the population is going to slough off.
That is, I'm actually surprised you're coming with me down this rabbit hole, or you're going to be a little black rain cloud with me. I'm kind of worried about the health of the game myself, and this is actually all the points that I wanted to make. There is nothing besides the ops lasting, and that combined with the fact that people's gameplay isn't going to change all that much leads me to fear that people are going to get bored and quit.
Yep.
Because not everybody does ops. In fact, I would wager less than half of the population does ops.
I will be on Fleet, and I get bored randomly. Don't ask why. I'm fucking weird. I'm a gossip person. So I'll get bored on Fleet, and I will randomly start inspecting people and looking at their achievements and what guild they're from, just to get a basic eye of what guilds do what on the servers I'm on. And there are any number of guilds that I see very active with many members that don't even have full story mode clears, and that's fine. They choose to enjoy the game in a different manner. But if there are a lot of people that don't do raids, and the main thing that we're getting that we're excited about in this expansion is raids, I'm worried.
Yes.
And I've almost always been an optimist towards BioWare. I've almost always been you guys are being devil's advocate, everything's fine, you're all being doom and gloom for nothing. I didn't make fun of, but I disagreed with you guys before I was in Guild when you guys did the roadmap. I disagreed with Zors when WildStar was about to come out, and everybody was RIP SWTOR, WildStar, next greatest thing. But at the same time, I have to kind of agree with some of the naysayers now, because I'm worried. And I know that one of the devs at the event said that this year's our big year. I hope when they say that, they don't mean 5 months from December we will get content. I hope it's more there's stuff very soon down the pipeline, because I'm actually worried for the longevity of the game, and I'm worried about the population. And I feel like we're almost at I feel like we're at a critical mass in this game. We're entering into 3.0. We're about to get an expansion pack. It's clear that BioWare cares about it. They also have a new game, a new IP by the same development team, the same studio. And if we don't have adequate content that is replayable by the majority of the game, not just the people like us that are all elitist assholes, it's going to look bad on a spreadsheet for the higher-ups, and it may get to the point where more resources are given to the new IP. And that's the kind of thing that I think about when I look at this roadmap and I look at what content we're getting.
Yes. These are all concerns that I share. Here's my problem. It was ambitious to change the discipline system, but I think it could have been more. You've got to change the way people play, or they're going to get bored. That's just the way it is. And I'm going to go to that well again. WoW did that. Every time an expansion came out, the way your class plays got changed. almost universally for every spec of every class. Something significant got changed. Honestly, right now, that's not the case. I mean, in fact, you could probably count on one hand the number of specs that actually got significantly changed, to the point where you could say, like, their playstyle is different. One is engineering, and the other is, like, rage, kind of. Again, AP and Pyro for Pyrotex does not count. That's just a flip.
Sith Kitty asked a question asking what if they only had one operation at release of 3.0 and had the second one months down the road, and I would say that would only artificially inflate it. That would artificially inflate it. Like, it wouldn't actually change the issue that I'm seeing, because again, I'm totally fine with the ops. It's not the ops content that I'm worried about for the majority of the game. Like, we were really pissed off when Dread Palace and Dread Fortress lasted as long as it did, but I would argue, if you, outside of rating, if you look at the community in general and you look at, like, profits from their earnings calls, SWTOR did just fine with that drought. And I think it's because raids don't matter as much as we would like them to matter. We are not the end-all, be-all. And if we got one raid and then another one a couple months later, that would be like an artificial, oh, here's more content after 3.0 for raiders, when it's like, I'm not worried about what the raiders are getting right now.
Ralos brings up the point that changing the way that people play, they didn't want to do because they didn't want to put in the time to think about how to rework rotations. It would have required triple the beta testing given the internal time they have. So that, like, speaks to their resource allocation, I would think. Again, I'm a combat team agnostic. I can confirm that there are, not really agnostic, I guess I'm a believer that there are two of them, at least. But I don't know how many
You believe in
there
a
are
higher
beyond that.
power, you just may not have a Bible.
Yes. I would say I'm spiritual regarding the combat team, not religious.
Basically, you're a single white female when it comes to the combat team.
I'm looking to find the combat team. The thing is, if they don't have, like, the man-hours to do anything ambitious, that worries me. That worries me a lot as to their resource allocation at the studio.
Well, what worries me is that, so, like, let's go a little speculation here. Like,
Sure.
So
we
they're
are
making
speculating
money
already, but yeah.
Yeah, they're making money. They're making good money. They did an earnings call. They were very happy with how SWTOR was doing in general, right? So then we start seeing a couple new hires. Specifically, the one that I can reference that's like an open public thing is Pocket.
Sure.
And it's a new community. So you say to yourself, okay, that's more people in the community, that's more interaction, et cetera, et cetera. Then the other shoe drops. Shadow Realms is a new IP, and if you notice their website and what they're doing for social media, they have quite a few active posts from people that are in our community team. So we have more money coming in from SWTOR, and we have people being hired, but we also have another game. And it feels kind of frustrating that our game is doing well, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, I can't actually say this, but it seems fairly obvious that the money that is coming from SWTOR is not in any meaningful way being funneled back into the development of SWTOR. It looks like it's being funneled back into the development of Shadow Realms. And I'm not saying that's a problem, because as a business that actually kind of makes sense. But from like an actual game standpoint, when we already have resources spread thin, you think that it's just going to get better when you have another IP? How Shadow Realms does and how we do after 3.0, they will directly affect one another.
Yeah. I will say Shadow Realms made like a public announcement that they're pushing back their alpha to January, which is not that far away. They were supposed to have it like during September or whatever. So I don't know. I can't speak as to their development processes. I am worried that, and maybe this is unfounded, I try not to be this guy that Shadow Realms is taking up all their time now, and they've got a new baby, and we're being neglected or whatever. Because we're not really being neglected. I do think that these are symptoms of an old problem that this game has, that they're focusing on the wrong things for an MMO. The story is great. I like the story. Have as much of that as you want. To a point. The game, day-to-day gameplay has to be engaging, or people are going to quit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another thing, like I don't want to get all whiny. I'm the little kid, and you just had another baby mom, and you're not paying attention to me.
Yes.
But like in a way that I'm trying to be respectful. Up until decently recently, when it came to what Pocket does day to day, I swear to God I couldn't tell you.
That's
like
true.
she was hired for SWTOR. It was made seem like she was going to be big in the community. I rarely saw dev posts from her. I rarely saw updates, and I'm not saying she didn't do work. It's clear that she does work, and she also does work on Shadow Realms. My point is, what is it exactly that you do here for SWTOR?
Yeah, I mean, the entire community team is actually like working on both games, from what I understand. So there's that.
Ralos brings up an amazing point. Let's sabotage Shadow Realms. I'm all for this.
I'm actually I'm not for that. I want them to do well. I'm not saying they shouldn't do well or anything like that. I just would like them to perhaps allocate some resources to SWTOR that would allow them to do ambitious things, like change the way people play. And instead of subtracting abilities from classes like Agent, adding them. Let me think about this. Other than Kulto Waves, and like the new concealment button, are there really any new abilities for Agent? Because I cannot think of any.
You mean
ability
like
replacements
not
do not
counting
count.
replacements?
No.
Okay, if we're not counting, I mean, basically, nah. I mean, it
Engineering
seems like
actually doesn't have an ability replacement, by the way. But EMP discharge just got changed, so...
What gets to me is that when 2.0 came out, I'm not trying to just universally compare 2.0 and 3.0, but
Sure.
when we got our changes, we got another button. We didn't lose a bunch of buttons. And I understand that getting another
There's
button
nothing wrong with
and
like
still having a
there's nothing wrong with
hypersystem-
trimming ability bloat, but I would not call explosive
Absolutely.
probe and ambush ability bloat. Or
Well,
orbital. I don't know why they
would
did
argue, I would argue that I can't really say that any spec currently has quote-unquote ability bloat. I mean,
that.
I used
Mercenary
to...
has a lot of fucking buttons. Mercenary has a fucking lot of buttons.
They do,
So does
but like
Marauder.
I mean, Marauder has a lot of buttons, but like they have a lot of buttons depending on what spec you're in. Like Annihilation, only certain buttons matter. Like Carnage, only certain buttons matter. Yeah, we have a lot of buttons, but like, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we're doing this thing that other classes aren't, where it's like we actually have 11. It's like, yeah, we have defensive cooldowns we use, and we have like Berserk and Predation, but like realistically, when it comes to actual damage abilities, there's not much we have to press, and like it's not like anything about it is like inherently hard. Like I can do it. Like anyone can do it. It's not difficult. The learning curve isn't super steep. So it's like we're making the learning curve and we're making the skill cap more shallow and lower, which I guess is fine because, you know, it's going to be more, I guess, available to lesser skilled players, or people can sort of like get better at alts quicker, I guess. But
There's less beginners traps, shit like that. I'm fine with that.
yeah, it's just I'm not seeing a big advantage. I'm seeing the upside from a balance standpoint. I'm seeing upside from a certain quality of life standpoint. I'm not seeing an upside where it's like, we just changed how we're doing our system for balance with combat. And here are all the new things. It's like, no, it's here are all these things you no longer have. Here's this one ability that replaces another one.
Let's be fair.
Here are a couple ability like animations that look cool.
Not
and
every class got
otherwise
things
it's-
taken away. Like Juggernaut
Of
got
course.
nothing taken away.
No, but like as a whole, if you really wanted to go down the line, I would say more is taken out, added in, which is fine because for balancing, I imagine that is like a thing.
Like every
it's
new
just-
healer
I
got
don't-
one new heal, right? So there's a little bit different. In fact, healing should be a little bit like healers should have some refreshing gameplay because they got that, and because it'll change their whole the way they heal. Other than that, though, DPS and tanking just has all the criticism I have for things not changing enough applies to those two roles.
I mean, I'll tank in 3.0, and I'm sure it'll be fine for me because I haven't done it for multiple tiers, so it will still seem new to me. So I'll be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about it. I worry for the people that have done it for 3 tiers and have been complaining about them for 2.
Sure.
There are already not enough people who are willing to tank in this game. and I'm not seeing any advantage or any sort of benefit to you saying, hey, I know you like seeing high numbers on this little purse thing. I know you like seeing that 10k right over the boss. How about you hop on this tank and get bored out of your mind by a low APM requiring skill threshold?
Yes. Also, people will yell at you.
You can have a high APM. You can have a high APM as a tank. You can really care about everything you do. You can min-max everything. Or you can have your DPS hit their aggro drops at a specific point and set a strategy that is based around the idea that your tank is a potato and you can still clear content. So, like, I don't know why I'm asking for the skill cap to be raised with tanking, but I'm asking for the skill cap to be raised for tanking.
Skill cap in general, or at least the APM to force a higher skill cap?
Both.
What could they possibly do, though? Like, I can't think
they
of
could make it...
Other than make you do more damage, which has its own problems.
Well, I wish that taunts were more sparse, and that you doing an optimal rotation is how you kept threat.
That's one thing, okay.
I also wish that... Okay, this is going to sound biased because I played a Marauder for so long. I wish that tank APM requirement was roughly as high as a Marauder APM requirement. The fact that that's not the case, kind of bothers me.
How do you make something like, say I have a 48 APM? How do you make that a requirement as a tank?
I don't know, because I'm not a dev, so this is kind of like bitching without a solution, like without a real solution. There's something about, like, when I tank, like if I tank a fight and it's like, oh, I'm working my ass off and I've got an APM of like 42, and then I'll look at logs of tanks in other guilds, and this isn't shitting on them because they're clearing content and I'm happy for them, where they have an APM on the same fight of like 24, and it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, once you taunt over something, it's just too easy to have threat, so you can basically just basic attack and shit in the corner and you're fine.
I mean, yeah, that's actually a pretty good brainstorming point.
Like, I remember, I know that a lot of people have... I know that KBN is a polarizing figure, but he and I were talking about this, and I think it's interesting, this idea that he came up with. I think it would be interesting if the threat that you gain from a taunt decayed over time. Because to me, it's too easy for me to just... I can fluff off of the other tank, or I can fluff off of the DPS.
If you ever died, you would never keep the boss.
Well, I mean, the idea is that as a tank you don't die, but...
I know, but
like,
if you're like the off tank and you die doing something else, you can't get the boss back. That would not... that has a lot of problems to it, that particular idea. I wouldn't do it.
That's fair. I'm brainstorming ways, because right now, there's not really a requirement to have to do anything, because it's so easy to act. Like, after the yes, snap threat can be a little finicky, of course, but like once you're past maybe the first like 25-30 seconds of a fight, I mean, you can literally basic attack. I've seen tanks do it. I've seen nightmare tanks not be able to do what tanks are supposed to do in their class, and they clear the boss because, well, I mean, taunts just work in a multiplicative fashion. Like, it doesn't matter. I just wish there was a way to affect that, but I'm not knowledgeable enough about tanks. But, I mean, Tenebris, what do you think about that, about what they should do with tanks?
I honestly don't know, but it's just so poorly designed in this game, they'd have to start from the ground up. Threat is just a joke, like a complete and utter joke. It matters for 10 seconds, and then you can AFK, and it doesn't matter, so who cares? I'm just so over tanking at this point.
Yeah. It also helps that you're a really good DPS, so like there's a good reason for us to not have you tank.
Well, I think you need to take a step back and look at the measure of a tank. I think if you look at tanking and you measure the skill of a tank, you need to look at opposite factors, APM not even being considered, except for the fact that you need to maintain a specific rotation at least to maintain mitigation. Depending on your class changes, of course, your spec and your rotation. Now, when you look at how good a tank is, it is not how good his APM is. It is not how good his rotation or how good his mitigation is. It is his cooldowns on the right timing? Is his movement, is his use of mechanics proper? Is his job is to make the healers and the DPS's job easier? That is how you measure a tank. So if you make it to where the tank doesn't have time to do any of that, you then take away from the value of a tank, and you now have someone that's just a busybody in a corner doing something, when technically now I get that they don't have to be a busybody, but if you throw skill level difference in between there, you should be able to see raid damage go up